Welcome back. The Trump administration accusing China of conducting at least one secret nuclear test back in 2020. A top State Department official saying that Beijing used a decoupling method to hide nuclear activities. President Trump seeking to negotiate a new nuclear treaty, including China, after the New START deal between the U.S. and Russia expired last week. Secretary of State Marco Rubio echoing the president's sentiment. Watch.
Obviously, the president's been clear in the past that in order to have true arms control in the 21st century, it's impossible to do something that doesn't include China because of their vast and rapidly growing stockpile.
Joining me now is Gatestone Institute Senior Fellow Gordon Chang. Gordon, great to see you this morning. Your reaction?
Oh, certainly. China has, for at least 2 decades, maybe 3 decades, been detonating fissile material at nuclear weapons tests. Now, China has signed but not ratified the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty, but it has said that it does adhere to a moratorium on the detonation of fissile material, which, by the way, is the U.S. position as well. But I think that it's important for the Trump administration to have done that. They deserve a lot of credit because previous administrations have known what the Chinese and, by the way, the Russians have been doing and have not been willing to talk about it in public. So kudos to Trump.
Yeah. Well, look, I want to also get your take on what's going on with gold, because gold has been soaring and it's up about, 14% year to date. Investors from China have bought roughly 432 metric tons of gold bars and coins last year, 28% higher than the year earlier, according to the Wall Street Journal. Gordon, your thoughts on China buying up gold here?
This buying up gold is largely by individuals. And this is essentially capital flight. They don't trust their currency. They don't trust stocks. The property market's a disaster. And so what they are doing is going for a safe haven asset. And that is one of the reasons why gold and silver have done so well, because the Chinese individuals have bought into it. In addition, of course, the Chinese central government has bought gold for a number of reasons. But China's been driving the prices increases in gold and silver.
Yeah, I know. And when I spoke with the Treasury Secretary about it, I think he basically said he thinks it's a bubble. Watch this. Normally, people buy gold and hard assets because they're not sure. They're sort of hedging their bets. But there's also a big move in rare earth and critical minerals as the president comes up with this stockpile to compete against China. Is that part of it? What do you think's behind the gold move?
Well, the gold move, things have gotten a little unruly in China. They're having to tighten margin requirements. So the gold looks to me kind of like a classical speculative blow-off. But what I will tell you, we had at the State Department, there was a rare earth ministerial, countries all around the world. This is what U.S. leadership looks like. The U.S. is leading in solving this rare earth problem. Countries are not sovereign. You are not sovereign if one country can control your supply chains, and we are making our supply chains resilient.
I thought that it was interesting that he called it a speculative blow-up. Gordon?
Yes, and part of it is because Trump has essentially a weak dollar policy, and that has driven a lot of the price increases in precious metals.
That's exactly what it is.
And I actually think
like that the dollar's weak.
Yeah, and I actually think that for various reasons, Trump will go to a stronger dollar policy. That's just a guess. And if that's the case, then indeed gold and silver will decline, and they'll decline rapidly when people understand that there has been a change in policy in the White House.
Meanwhile, a Hong Kong court has sentenced former media tycoon and pro-democracy activist Jimmy Lai. He was sentenced for 20 years in prison, another 20 years right now is what he just got. Lai was found guilty on charges including collusion with foreign forces and endangering national security. He was one of the first notable figures arrested in 2020 following that pro-democracy protest. In a statement, the Asia Director for Human Rights says, quote, a sentence of this magnitude is both cruel and profoundly unjust. Gordon, I'll be speaking with Jimmy Lai's son, Sebastian Lai, this morning in the 7 a.m. hour. Your reaction to this terrible, terrible treatment of Jimmy Lai in China?
Jimmy Lai should never have been tried in the first place. And when you have a 78-year-old who is not in good health gets a 20-year sentence, that's essentially a life sentence. Now, you've been relentless in trying to free him. And I think that you and others will be successful in this regard. But nonetheless, this shows the cruelty of the Chinese regime. He should have never been tried. And this is just beyond bounds.
Yeah, cruelty and corruption. I mean, he's trying to spew freedom and pursue truth. And they threw the freedom fighters in jail and tried to make him the face of it. The president held a phone call with Xi Jinping this last week. Your thoughts ahead of the president's meeting with Xi Jinping expected in April?
Yeah, President Trump said that he had an excellent call. He says that his relationship with Xi Jinping is extremely good. He calls Xi Jinping a friend. And yet at the same time, when the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer went to Beijing, he said it was very dangerous for China, for UK to deal with China. Those two things can't be at the same time. We have to have some leadership on this issue. And by the way, yesterday, Prime Minister Takaichi, as you pointed out, had this astounding, historic win. And that win is largely due to her standing up to China. When she made her comments on November 7th, China went into a fit. She stood her ground. She did not back down. And because of that, she became very popular. So she thought she could hold that snap election. And I think that this is a message to other leaders around the world that it can be popular to stand up to China, just as she did.
I'm so glad you went there. That's absolutely right. The Prime Minister's ruling coalition secured 354 out of the 465 seats in Japan's lower house election. Takaichi's agenda includes new investment in defense. And certainly her instinct is to bring the United States closer. It is a very important point to make that Japan is a very important friend of the United States. And she's in the neighborhood where China tries to dominate.
As Treasury Secretary Bessent said, when Japan is strong, the United States is strong in East Asia. And that is absolutely right, because Japan, as is often called, is our cornerstone ally. It is the one that helps the United States maintain peace and stability in Asia. And we have a Japan that is now building up its self-defense forces. It is now cooperating closely with the United States in the defense of Okinawa and Taiwan. So this is a really important development. And it's a message to Xi Jinping that his harsh diplomacy is counterproductive. He won't take that on board. He probably is going to continue his bender. But Japan shows that China's mistakes are going to be grievous.
Yeah, just as China tries to keep the United States and Japan hostage from the critical minerals that both countries need. Gordon, we'll keep a spotlight on that one. Thank you so much. Good to see you. Gordon Chang. We'll be right back.